Breaking, Prince William just broke a 300-year royal rule, and what he said in one statement is ending a Prime Minister's career. 3 days ago, Britain's political establishment received a shock they never saw coming. The future King of England spoke out against his own government, not with a speech, not with an interview, with a single written statement that shattered decades of constitutional silence. Here's what happened, and why the fallout could reshape British democracy forever. If you want to understand what's really happening inside the palace right now, hit subscribe, because this story is far from over. On October 30th, Labour Chancellor Rachel Reeves announced the autumn budget. Buried in the numbers was a decision that would ignite a firestorm. The winter fuel payment, a benefit worth up to £300 for millions of pensioners, would be means-tested, starting immediately. An estimated 10 million elderly Britons would lose the support they've relied on for 25 years. The policy would save the Treasury £1.5 billion. But to critics, the timing couldn't be worse. Energy costs remained 50% higher than pre-pandemic levels. Then came the letters. Kensington Palace receives correspondence daily, but aides noticed something different in late October. The volume spiked. Hundreds, then thousands of handwritten letters from pensioners began arriving. Many were from veterans, some were barely legible, written by arthritic hands. Palace sources say Prince William was visibly affected by what he read. On November 2nd, at 4:47 p.m, Kensington Palace issued a statement. It was brief, just 43 words, but the impact was seismic. The key line read, "While we respect the independence of government, we cannot remain silent when we see our fellow citizens, particularly our elderly, facing unnecessary hardship this winter." Constitutional experts immediately called it unprecedented. The monarchy hasn't directly challenged government policy since the 1936 abdication crisis. Royal neutrality is the bedrock of Britain's constitutional arrangement. But William calculated differently. One senior royal aide told The Times he felt that silence itself had become a political act. The statement didn't attack the Labour government by name, it didn't call for policy reversal, but the implication was unmistakable. The future king had drawn a moral line. Within 2 hours, #royal intervention was trending worldwide. Britain's political class was blindsided. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's response came the next morning. Speaking from Downing Street, he defended the budget as fiscally responsible. But his tone was noticeably defensive. Behind closed doors, the reaction was far harsher. Cabinet sources leaked furious exchanges. One minister reportedly called it constitutional vandalism. But polling told a different story. A YouGov survey conducted 48 hours after the statement showed 68% of Britons supported William's intervention. Among over 60s, the figure hit 81%. Labour's disapproval rating dropped 7 points in 1 week, the sharpest decline since they took office. The political pressure intensified when other royals appeared to align with William's position. Princess Anne made an unscheduled visit to a veterans' charity in Birmingham. Prince Edward attended a pensioners' lunch in Wales, spending over an hour speaking with attendees about rising costs. The palace insisted these were routine engagements. But the timing spoke volumes. Then came the most significant development. King Charles III requested a meeting with the Prime Minister. The audience, held at Buckingham Palace on November the 5th, lasted 90 minutes, far longer than the typical weekly consultation. Downing Street described it as routine. But sources familiar with the conversation told a different story. The king expressed deep personal concern about the winter fuel cuts. He referenced letters he'd received from pensioners, echoing his son's intervention. Charles stopped short of demanding a policy U-turn. He couldn't. That would violate his constitutional duty. But he made clear the monarchy's moral position. Protecting the vulnerable isn't political, it's foundational. The meeting placed Starmer in an impossible bind. Reversing the policy would look weak, but maintaining it meant fighting a PR war against the crown itself. An unwinnable battle in monarchist Britain. Parliamentary Labour started fracturing. 15 backbench MPs signed a letter calling for the policy to be reviewed. But William didn't stop at words. On November 8th, the Royal Foundation announced a £10 million winter support fund. The money would provide direct heating assistance to vulnerable pensioners through a network of local charities. The foundation partnered with Age UK, the British Legion, and over 200 community organisations. The first payments went out November the 12th. Palace aides insisted this wasn't political, just charitable work the foundation had done for years. But the scale and speed were unprecedented, and the message was clear. If the government won't act, the Crown will. Images of Prince William and Catherine visiting a London food bank went viral. They were photographed packing emergency heating vouchers and winter care packages. One photo captured 8-year-old Princess Charlotte adding a hand-drawn card to a package. The caption read, "Stay warm this winter." The propaganda value was devastating for Labour. Here was the next generation of royals taking action while elected officials defended spreadsheets. Beneath the constitutional drama lies stark human reality. Age UK estimates that last winter, 4,950 excess deaths among the elderly were linked to cold homes. This winter, with reduced support, that number could rise. In Sunderland, 81-year-old Robert Mitchell, a former shipyard worker, was hospitalised with hypothermia in early November. His daughter found him unconscious, wearing 3 coats indoors. The heating had been off for 2 weeks. Dad built ships for 40 years, she told local media. He helped build this country. Now he's rationing warmth like it's wartime. These aren't abstract policy debates. They're life and death consequences of fiscal decisions made in distant offices by people who'll never face these choices. On November 28th, the government blinked. Chancellor Reeves announced a modified policy. The winter fuel payment would be restored for pensioners over 80 and those receiving disability benefits. The change would cost £800 million, roughly half the original savings. Officially, the decision was framed as a refinement based on updated economic forecasts. But everyone understood the real reason. The royal intervention had made the policy politically unsustainable. Starmer claimed victory, saying the government had balanced fiscal responsibility with compassion. But the damage was done. Labour looked reactive, forced into a U-turn by public pressure and royal disapproval. William had won. Not through constitutional power, but through moral authority. Kensington Palace issued a brief statement welcoming the policy change. The words were diplomatic, but the subtext was clear. The Crown had moved the government. The November crisis has reshaped British politics in ways still unfolding. Labour's honeymoon period ended abruptly. Starmer's personal approval ratings remained depressed. The monarchy paradoxically emerged stronger. Polling shows public support for the institution at its highest level in a decade. William's approval rating hit 77%, higher than any royal except the late Queen Elizabeth II. But constitutional experts warn the precedent is dangerous. We've normalised royal intervention in policy debates, says Professor Robert Hazel of UCL. That's a path toward instability. The question now is whether William will intervene again. Has he set an expectation that he'll speak out whenever he views policies as morally wrong? And what happens when public opinion doesn't align with royal opinion? The Crown's power derives from popular support. Politicisation could erode that foundation. This crisis reveals something profound about modern Britain. Trust in traditional institutions, parliament, media, even the NHS, has eroded. But the monarchy, an institution many predicted would fade into irrelevance, has found renewed purpose. Why? Because in an age of cynicism, people crave authenticity. William's intervention felt genuine, not calculated. He risked constitutional backlash to defend the vulnerable. That resonates. It also highlights a dangerous trend, the personalisation of politics. When elected governments fail, people turn to symbolic figures for leadership. That's how democracies weaken. The winter fuel crisis wasn't just about heating payments. It was a stress test of British democracy. And the results are troubling. So here's what we're left with. Did Prince William save vulnerable pensioners from a cruel winter? Or did he undermine democratic accountability in ways that will haunt Britain for generations? The answer is probably both. He showed that moral leadership still matters, that power without compassion is hollow, and that silence in the face of suffering is its own kind of failure. But he also demonstrated that the Crown can move governments, that popular sentiment can override elected authority, and that Britain's constitutional order is more fragile than we thought. As winter deepens and the political fallout continues, one thing is certain. The relationship between Crown and Parliament will never be quite the same. The future king has stepped out of the shadows, and he's not going back. What do you think? Did William cross a line, or did he do exactly what a future king should do? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We're reading every single response. And if this story made you think differently about the monarchy's role in modern Britain, share it with someone who needs to see this. Because this conversation is just beginning. Tomorrow, we'll reveal how this crisis is changing royal protocol behind palace walls and what it means for King Charles's reign. You won't want to miss it.